Welcome to Friends and Fiction. 4 New York Times bestselling authors, endless stories. Novelists Mary Kay Andrews, Kristin Harmel, Kristy Woodson Harvey, and Patti Callahan Henry are 4 longtime friends with more than 70 published books between them. Together, they host Friends and Fiction, with author interviews and fascinating insider talk about publishing and writing, to highlight and support independent bookstores. They discuss the books they've written, the books they're reading now, and the art of storytelling. If you love books and you're curious about the writing world, you're in the right place.
Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Friends and Fiction Show. I'm Mary Kay Andrews.
I'm Kristin Harmel.
I'm Kristy Woodson Harvey.
And I'm Patti Callahan Henry.
And this is Friends and Fiction, 4 New York Times best-selling authors, endless stories to support indie bookstores, authors, and librarians. On this episode, we are thrilled, beyond thrilled, to welcome Michael Connelly to discuss his new novel, The Waiting. The book was released on October 15th, and we're so excited to speak to Michael about it.
But first, we have a few quick reminders. We would love for you to check out all the fun things going on in our Friends and Fiction community at friendsandfiction.com. There you will find our show schedule, details on upcoming in-person events, and links to our bookshop.org page, to the award-winning Friends and Fiction official book club with Brenda and Lisa, to our merch store, and our Substack newsletter sign-up. In other words, if you want to know more about anything Friends and Fiction offers, and we offer a lot, be sure to check out friendsandfiction.com.
Did you hear that we are offering a holiday special on our paid Substack? I know, it's very exciting. Join us on the paid level on Friends and Fiction Endless Stories. Normally it's $5 a month, but until mid-December, the paid subscription is 20% off. So for $1 a week or less on those longer months, you will get all sorts of bonus content all month long.
That's right. And I love talking about our Substack newsletter because I think you guys don't realize how much great stuff is in it. It is chock full of amazing things. But in addition to our free weekly posts, our paid subscribers have access to extra content, including deeper dives with our weekly show guests, bonus green room footage, and you're not going to want to miss what we just talked about with Michael Connelly, monthly roundtable discussions. We have some really good ones coming up with the 4 of us, like the one Mary Kay Andrews just did with 5 thriller writers about why we like to be scared. I didn't participate because I don't like to be scared. But and then we are now doing live with the 4 of us, Ask Me Anything. Meg joins us too. You can ask us anything you want about our lives, writing, back scenes, things, and private Zoom sessions.
And speaking of Zoom, our next VIP live Zoom session with the 4 of us will be Wednesday, December 18th, right before next month's live show. Only our paid subscribers will be eligible to join the 4 of us for an exclusive ugly sweater party. And, Kristy has this bizarre idea that she's going to win. So you want to check us out for that.
No, you guys, it's going to be me.
No,
I'm just saying.
You won last year. You should let somebody else have a turn, Kristin.
You don't understand.
We're gonna ask for your pics of your ugly sweaters in advance, and the 4 of us will judge. And on our live Zoom, we'll each pick a winner. So 4 lucky winners will get a prize from each of us. But you have to be a paid subscriber to join, and you have to be present on the Zoom to win.
Yeah. So if you enjoy tuning in for our Friends and Fiction interviews, this is a big way that you can support us for basically the cost of a cup of coffee. It really doesn't cost very much to follow us on Substack. You can also start free and upgrade. So check us out at friendsandfiction.substack.com and take advantage of this 20% off deal for a very limited time, which lets you upgrade to paid for just $4 a month.
Okay, now, the moment we've all been waiting for. Drum roll. We have not 1, but 2 special book bundles to tell you about really quickly. So first up
Did you just take away my drum roll? I'm just asking.
I'm sorry. Did you want to jump in?
Yes, I did.
Okay. Well, go ahead.
Okay, I did.
That was so good.
Thank you.
So our 2025 Friends and Fiction subscription box is available now.
Yay!
Oxford Exchange. So when you sign up for the flat rate of $110, you receive 3 shipments next year, each containing an autographed first edition hardcover copy of our forthcoming 2025 books on their pub dates, plus a special Friends and Fiction car magnet and a custom-made Friends and Fiction friendship bracelet that's available only in this bundle.
And they are so cute.
You have it on.
That's awesome.
It is not the Apple Watch. You do not get an Apple Watch. It's just
I did not get a friendship bracelet.
Yeah.
Am I not your friends? Is that how you guys feel about me? Is that it?
I love you. You're my friend.
Okay, but not a bracelet friend. But okay, as a special holiday bonus, if you order before December 10th, you will also get a special holiday card from the 4 of us, a holiday ornament, and a gift certificate detailing what will be coming your way in 2025. This makes the 2025 box an ideal holiday gift, as you'll have something to wrap up and present to your favorite book lover this holiday season. So get those orders in soon to get in on all the holiday fun. Again, that deadline is December 10th. To get the holiday ornament and the holiday card.
Okay, Michael's coming on in like 1 second.
I promise. We'll stop
I
talking.
promise. Michael, don't you leave us. But we have one more thing to talk about, and that is on top of our subscription box. You know our dear friend Tim at Nantucket Books. You know how much we love him and his store and Nantucket. And he is having a holiday-themed title package. My book, Once Upon a Wardrobe, Mary Kay's Bright Lights Big Christmas, Kristy's Christmas in Peachtree Bluff, all signed, plus a Friends and Fiction Seasons Readings tote bag and a Friends and Fiction pin. Our pal Tim is standing by. There's only 10 left of these Christmas gift babies. I know, so act fast. All right.
Okay, now let's welcome our friend Michael Connelly. Michael is the best-selling author of 39 novels and 1 work of nonfiction. With over 85 million copies of his books sold worldwide and translated into 45 foreign languages, he's one of the most successful writers working today. His very first novel, The Black Echo, won the prestigious Mystery Writers of America Edgar Award for Best First Novel in 1992. In 2002, Clint Eastwood directed and starred in the movie adaptation of Connelly's 1998 novel, Bloodwork. In March 2011, the movie adaptation of his #1 best-selling novel, The Lincoln Lawyer, hit theaters worldwide, starring Matthew McConaughey as Mickey Haller.
Michael's most recent New York Times bestsellers include Resurrection Walk, Desert Star, The Dark Hours, The Law of Innocence, The Night Fire, and Dark Sacred Night. Michael's crime fiction career was honored with the Diamond Dagger from the CWA in 2018 and the Outstanding Contribution to Crime Writing Award at the 2022 Theakston's Old Peculiar Crime Writing Festival. Did I say that right? Probably not. In Harrogate, England. And the Grand Master title from the Mystery Writers of America in 2023.
Michael is the executive producer of Bosch and Bosch Legacy, 2 Amazon Studios original drama series based on his best-selling character, Harry Bosch, starring Titus Welliver. Is that what I just said? He is also the executive producer of The Lincoln Lawyer on Netflix.
Michael decided to become a writer after discovering the books of Raymond Chandler while attending the University of Florida, where he majored. I'm not looking. I can see out of the side of my eye that you are doing like a weird gator thing, but I'm not looking. He majored in journalism and creative writing. He worked as a newspaper reporter, primarily specializing in the crime beat in Daytona Beach and Fort Lauderdale, ending his work as a crime reporter at the LA Times before, thank goodness for all of us, turning to fiction.
Michael spends his time in California and Florida. His new book, The Waiting, was released October 15th and was an instant #1 New York Times bestseller. Sean, please bring Michael on.
Hi, Michael.
Hi, Michael.
You're still here. Phew.
I apologize for my background. You guys all have books and scenic reflection there. I got a white wall.
Oh, stop.
You have
We
so
don't
many
judge.
stories to fill it up that you don't need anything else.
Right.
Exactly.
And you should see some of the backgrounds we have had through the years when we've been on the road. So
That
some
is
of them
very
look like
true.
we've been kidnapped. So yeah.
That's true.
Welcome. We're finally so glad to have you. The Waiting. We're going to go right into talking to you about this new book, The Waiting. Opens with your LAPD cold case detective Renee Ballard in her happy place, surfing. But when she returns to her car, she finds it's been broken into and her badge and service weapon have been stolen. So you start this novel with what seems like a petty routine crime that quickly escalates into so much more, including bringing in a group intent on committing domestic terrorism. Now, I read that you're not a big outliner, so we would be fascinated to hear about your plotting process on this book.
Well, I always like to do things where something small becomes something big.
Mm.
Kind of do that in our novels, and yeah, I don't really outline, but I don't really start writing till I have a pretty good sense of where this would be.
Okay.
And I'm trying to write books that are reflecting a little bit about what's going on in our world, and so I was reading these reports about how the FBI was classifying domestic terrorism as the biggest threat that they're interested in right now, or that they're on the watch for. And so that's, I started with the idea like, okay, I'm going to write a story that has that aspect in it. And I would give me the opportunity to bring in the FBI. I mean, when we're writing, we're always trying to, create a friction among characters as they're trying to solve cases. And nothing is better than the friction between the FBI and the LAPD. So those terms, not in terms of like making any kind of social statement or anything like that. And so I kind of hit upon what I was inspired. By the way, are long answers okay, or should I just?
No, we want to hear from you. We want to hear from you.
So I have a friend watching the news one day, and there's a report, local news here in LA, or in LA. I'm not in LA right now, but I suddenly see this friend of mine on the screen, and he's talking about when he was surfing, how his car was broken into, and he had a lot of stuff stolen and so forth. And then the news report went on to say this is a rash that's happening up and down the surfing beaches in California. And, I'm not stupid. I thought, well, that's an idea. And I've already been writing about this woman who kind of restores herself on the water, on the ocean, either paddleboarding or surfing. And so it kind of went from there. I thought like, okay, because of her position in the department where she has enemies, there's misogyny. She would, normally if your badge is stolen, you report it. It's humiliating. You get a ding in your personnel file, but they just get you another badge. And she felt that would be giving her enemies in the department enough ammo to move her out of this place where she really loves working, that is cold cases. So she decides, I'm going to do kind of a sub rosa investigation on my own, and I'm going to get my badge back. And so that all fit, with after happening to see my friend on the news one day. And, and then I contacted him, and he was the one who told me that the cops had told him when he reported it that they think they were using this app that tells you every morning where the best waves are in LA County.
Oh my gosh.
And that the thieves were using that to figure out where they would find a lot of surfers. And, when you're out on the water, it would take you forever to come in and stop someone from breaking into your car. And surfers don't surf with their keys in their pockets. So they usually hide them somewhere near their car or on their car or under their car. And so it was a really complicated thing that really is a petty crime, but it was escalated when a gun is stolen and a badge is stolen. And then, why would someone want that badge? And that leads down the road to a plan for a terrorist attack in Los Angeles.
I love it. And that's just one of the story threads in this book. I mean, that kind of gets us into it, but it takes some really cool directions. So I want to talk a little bit about Renee Ballard, who you were just talking about, who's the main focus of The Waiting. So you mentioned earlier when we were chatting in the green room that she was based at least a little bit on a real life cold case detective. Can you talk a little bit about where the inspiration from her character came from and how she's evolved since her first appearance in the Michael Connelly universe?
Yes, sure. But I should correct that. If I said she's a little bit based on, because she might.
No, I'm sorry. I think I put in a little bit. You said she was based on.
I got to say she's a single source inspiration for it.
That's awesome.
And I got to correct the record because she might be watching this.
Those are my words, not yours. Sorry.
Yeah, no, I've been very lucky, probably because of my days at the LA Times. I have a small cadre of homicide detectives, mostly retired now, because it's been a long time since I was a newspaper reporter. But they've been helping me with my work. And before they retired, they would often bring their partners, and usually veteran homicide detectives get assigned to a younger person to mentor them and teach them the ropes and so on and so forth. So this process has allowed me to meet several people. And about, 12, 15 years ago, I met a detective named Mitzi Roberts, who was assigned to the cold case unit at LAPD. And she was partnered with a longtime friend of mine, a source, whatever you want to call it, someone who's really helped me with my Harry Bosch novels. And, during the course of knowing her, at one point I said, how did you, she got into detectives at a pretty young age, which is really amazing, especially in LAPD, where women have a very steep hill to climb in this all male dominated bureaucracy. And she said she volunteered for the job no detective wants, and that is working the midnight shift in the Hollywood division. And so that, the light bulb went off, and I thought that could be a really interesting thing. So when we first meet Renee Ballard, I think it was maybe 6-7 years ago, I wrote the first book called The Late Show, which was a nickname for the midnight shift. She's working midnight shift and taking all kinds of cases. That's what attracted me to it in the first place, because I've been writing for many years about a guy. Every book was about a homicide investigation, and I like the idea of the variety that the midnight shift detective would encounter, from small crimes to big crimes and the occasional murder, and so that's where Renee Ballard was born from, and the real life inspiration, Detective Mitzi Roberts, is kind of with me all the way.
Amazing.
Someone I can reach out to anytime to ask questions, someone who reads my manuscripts and corrects them, especially about dialogue and the way she would handle things.
Wow.
She often is suggesting things, and she is a surfer and so forth. And so I remember in the very first book, I had her surfing, and one of her big notes from her reading the manuscript was like, hey, she needs a dog. She needs someone that can guard her stuff while she's out on the water, who can sit there, a really well-trained dog who will sit next to her bag of her belongings and so forth. And so that I took that and I introduced a dog into the book, into Ballard's life and so forth. So that's how it works. And it's been amazing. And it is more of not me being a creative genius. It's me being a reporter and knowing
Awesome.
going to her and asking questions and getting answers that certainly improve my work.
That is really cool.
God, what a great thing that is to have her. I feel I want to go find my Mitzi. That's amazing.
There's a weird irony in it that she just retired in April, and she now works as a writer and a producer. We're making a show called Ballard.
Wow, yeah.
And so I just feel kind of bad. I feel guilty. Like, she used to solve real murders. Now she's involved in a fictional.
I think she's fine. I think she's
second
fine.
act. Yeah. That's incredible.
That sounds really.
She solved a lot of cases, and she put in her time, and she's a real hero. And so she deserves this, and she's having a fun time. Really kind of her celluloid, or whatever you want to call it, counterpart is Maggie Q, and they become close friends because Maggie's basically playing her. And
I love that.
It's amazing.
Great to watch.
That is so interesting. Oh my goodness. Well, speaking of unforgettable characters of yours, you have been writing about your series character, Harry Bosch, for 30 years now, I believe. He's always been someone to knock heads with authority, a cop with a pretty unshakable moral compass. Now he's retired from the LAPD and undergoing cancer treatment. So how do you keep challenging yourself to keep him believable and relatable book after book?
Boy, we all write our characters, and we hope we're being realistic about them. The only thing you can follow, I mean, I've been very lucky that this guy's lasted this long. And I've never lost interest in writing about him.
Oh, that's amazing.
But but nothing can be static book to book. If things have to change, and he ages in real time. So as he was getting older, I had to really consider things about mortality and so forth as someone his age would deal with. And a long time ago, I wrote a book, maybe almost 20 years ago. And part of the case was he recovers some stolen, I think it's called cesium-137 or something that was stolen from a hospital. And it's really bad stuff. It's the stuff they could make dirty bombs with and so forth because it's highly radioactive. And in that book, he finds it, but he didn't realize he had it. So he's exposed to it. And part of the book is him getting checked out. But when I wrote that book, I knew somewhere down the line, if I'm still writing about Harry when he's in his 60s, that this is going to come back to haunt him. Yeah. Because, one of the sub themes or big themes of my books is the dangers of the job, and not about bullets and stuff like that. It's more like what you're exposed to, the darkness you're exposed to, how that can get inside you and, metastasize in its own way. And so that's really what I like writing about, the cost of doing this work and doing it well. And so now Harry's kind of dealing with a case that he worked, many, many years ago.
I love pulling all those threads all the way through. And I've never taken a character from any of my novels and brought them through, but I think about them all the time. Like the consequences of what they did, the consequences of their choices. It's fascinating. So I want to go back to the waiting. Ballard and her cold case squad believe they have finally found a suspect in a serial killer case called the Pillowcase Murderer. Now, I understand that you covered this real case. We talked a little bit about this in the green room, but back in your days as a crime reporter for the Fort Lauderdale paper, which is where I went to high school, Fort Lauderdale. But I think sometimes these things in our life simmer for a while and then boom, right? It's a book. So what made you decide now is the time to bring forth a Pillowcase Murderer for Ballard and her squad? What was the impetus for finally doing that?
Well, first, what high school did you go to? I went to high school in Fort Lauderdale.
I went to Coral Springs High School and Lighthouse Point Middle School.
Oh, okay, cool.
Where were you?
I went to 3 different high schools. That's why I'm a writer. I got kicked out of schools or changed my.
Me too. I went to 4 different schools in 7th, 8th, 9th, and 10th. So I was in Fort Lauderdale and then Coral Springs. Where'd you graduate from? What high school?
I graduated from St. Thomas Aquinas.
Oh, yeah. I know that. Yeah.
We know St. Thomas. Yep.
Anyway, so at one point I came back and I was covering crime. I wasn't born there, but I consider Fort Lauderdale my hometown. So I was working for my hometown paper, and I covered. This is going way back. This is in the 80s.
That's when I lived there. Yeah.
This pillowcase rapist.
Glad I didn't know about him.
Well, then you weren't reading the paper because I wrote a ton of stories about him because.
Oh my gosh.
He had something like 44 victims in 2 years.
Wow.
And it was a big story. And then he disappeared. No one was ever arrested. And that was it. A couple of years later, I get hired and move out to LA to be a reporter out there. And that was it. But then just a few years ago, through odd happenstance, he was identified and arrested. And it was a young man was arrested in a domestic violence case, and a felony level domestic violence case, which required in Florida that you have to give your any felony arrest, you give a swab and your DNA goes into the big maw and all that. And it popped out a familial connection that told authorities that this guy's father was the long unknown missing pillowcase rapist. So he was caught, and it was very simple. In my book, a similar thing happens, but we write fiction. We have to complicate things, and so there's all kinds of barricades or barriers to it's not as simple as like this guy's dad did it. They have to find who his dad was. So it turned out he was adopted under mysterious circumstances. So it becomes a difficult investigation, but it was all inspired by this real case and this
Wow.
amazing happenstance where they finally caught the guy. It's, and it begs the question, he got away with it for almost 40 years. So how much justice is there? He'll spend the rest of his life in prison, but he
was free for 40 years, right?
Yeah.
So, and that gets to the heart of cold cases, whether they're murders or sexual assault or whatever the case is. People wait a long time for justice, and when it comes, usually it's just answers. There's not really a good sense of justice being served.
It's hard.
Yeah.
Thus the title of the book, The Waiting.
Yeah.
All right. Speaking of, we're still back to cold cases. The Black Dahlia is probably one of the most notorious unsolved murders in California history. Not just California, because it's the stuff of pop culture legend, really.
Yeah.
But this time around, in The Waiting, it gets solved thanks to Harry's daughter, Maddie, who volunteers for Ballard's cold case squad. I'm wondering, as a recovering journalist myself, how long have you waited to tackle that story, the Black Dahlia, and why now?
Well, it's interesting. I can't say I waited to do it because it's such a universally known case. It's the most notorious case in LA history, I think. You might maybe Manson and maybe the assassination of Robert Kennedy are the other ones. But I just always thought, like, I'm not going to touch that. There's been lots of novels written about. There's been true crime books. There's documentaries. There's all kinds of stuff. So I usually try to stay away from that. I usually don't try to be inspired by really famous stuff. And but I just in the last few years, I guess, because I'm getting older or whatever, I kind of look back at what I've been doing. And, for 30 some years, I've been writing about Los Angeles, and people view me as a Los Angeles writer. And I thought, like, how could I do that and write realistically about Los Angeles? And yet in my first 38 novels, I never said the phrase "the Black Dahlia," never mentioned the case. And it just didn't sit well with me, especially because now I'm writing about the woman who runs cold case.
Yeah.
So I had that going. I thought, like, I should figure out some way of telling a Black Dahlia string in one of my stories. And my characters all age in real time, and I've been waiting a long time for Harry's daughter, Maddie, to be mature enough and have enough life experiences that she would be credible if she became an investigator. And I realized I could jumpstart that if she happened to just stumble onto some clue that would pertain to this big case, and that she would be smart enough as the daughter of a homicide detective to know, hey, man, wait a minute, this could be the answer that has eluded us since 1947. And so it was really a way of getting Maddie into a position where she can kind of take the baton from her dad. And I needed a case like this to make that happen. And so that's where it came from. And, I like it's folklore now in Los Angeles. And this case will never be solved. It's too old. And like I say, Missy Roberts, who ran cold case for many years, has told me it will never be solved. And she showed me what they have left and in the files and all that kind of stuff. So I wanted to write a story where it seems like it's solved, but it's not officially solved. And that's, without giving away too much. That's what I think I accomplished with the way I told the story in this book.
So
it's pretty chilling, that scene in the basement. Pretty chilling stuff.
Oh, yeah. The pictures. Cool. Yeah. So, Michael, you touched a little bit on your journalism career. So you worked the crime beat in Daytona and Fort Lauderdale during the height of South Florida's so-called cocaine wars. Your reporting for a magazine story on a plane crash and its survivors was shortlisted for a Pulitzer. And the final years of your newspaper career were spent as a crime reporter for one of the largest papers in the country, the Los Angeles Times. So 3 of the 4 of us come from journalism backgrounds too. I'm also a UF journalism grad, just like you. So I am
Sorry.
especially, go Gators.
Sorry about the Georgia score this year, guys.
Yeah, we're talking journalism, not football.
Okay.
I'm zipping it. Okay,
Yeah.
go ahead.
It's probably a better idea for me too. But when we're wondering about your journalism career, how and why you made the transition from journalism to writing fiction, and how do you think your experience as a reporter has shaped your work as an author? You touched on that a little bit earlier in terms of treating your development of characters like a reporter a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, it's weird. It looks like this master plan, but it was like more than a master hope.
I love that. A master
I
hope.
was in University of Florida. I went up there for engineering, actually. But I went to a movie, at the Union. They used to have these dollar movie nights, and I saw The Long Goodbye, which was a 1973 movie directed by Robert Altman, starring Elliot Gould. And I loved that movie, so that sent me to the bookstore, and I bought the book it was based on, and I read that, loved it. Then I read everything Raymond Chandler wrote, and it just turned my head, and I decided this is what I want. I want to try to do this rather than design or build buildings. I'd rather build stories. And so when I talked to my parents about it, I didn't say, "Hey, I want to be a novelist." I said, "I want to be a mystery writer. I want to be a crime novelist." And they and my father mostly said, "Then if you go down the English lit path, you might end up as an English teacher or something like that. But how will that get you in a position to write a crime novel?" So he suggested, as an alternative, go get a journalism degree, work for a newspaper, and ask for the crime beat job. And then it would be kind of like research, and it would be a very interesting job. Say you never are able to write a novel or publish a novel, it's still not a bad job. So that's what it became. So I did it for 14 years, and 12 of them were on the cop beats in different cities. And, so it was really kind of 12 years of research, and prepping me to write the books, to take that shot at it. And so it worked out. So now when I tell it, it's like, wow, you had this planned out, but it wasn't, you never know whether the inspiration will be right or whether you'll get published and all those things. It's all a long shot, but I felt like, I had a lot of, I can still remember the letters I wrote to agents, extolling my skills as a journalist and all the great crimes I've solved and all that stuff, just to get my foot in the door. And it was helpful.
That's awesome.
Yeah. I agree. I certainly didn't have like a long career in journalism like you did, but I do think having all those clips, and I also think they know right away you can write on a deadline. I think there's something kind of nice about that, just from a very practical perspective. You can write a beginning, middle, and end on a deadline, and that is a good thing.
Yeah, we all know that there's no writer's block at a newspaper.
No, that's true.
Hey, boss, I don't have it today. I'll see you tomorrow.
Sorry.
The muse hasn't visited.
I'm not inspired today. So
so you get that work ethic, and especially in what we do, it's you get crime fiction is pretty contemporaneous and it's pretty fast, and so that work ethic has served me so well. And then when you write every day, you learn how to write. You get whatever you do in life, the more you do it, the better you get at it. So if you're writing 5 stories a day, you should be getting better at it. And
that's
so
true.
it helped me in so many ways. It wasn't just being in cop shops and talking to detectives. It was also writing and learning to write and learning how to keep momentum in stories and learning an ear for dialogue.
I have not thought about this in a really long time, and I know I've never said it on the show, but I have to say that I should be writing a different kind of book. When I was 19, I did the crime beat at like a really small town newspaper, and I used to do the because I was 19, so I was up all night anyway. So I would go from like 11 to 2 to the magistrate's office and just like wait for things to like come in and happen. It's very exciting. I could have had a whole, I could be Michael Connelly right now. I did the wrong thing. Okay, we have a lot of questions coming in for you live from the audience too. And so this one is really interesting to me. So I wanted to ask you, being a Florida guy yourself, is there a reason that you haven't written a Florida book? And do you have plans to?
I think about that a lot. I mean, I had one, it's not a Florida book, but I did have Harry Bosch follow a case to Tampa, Florida in an early book. And it was mostly so I could come home and visit family and write off the trip as research. But I don't know. It's weird. Like you get stuck. I'm stuck is probably the wrong word. I'm so happy that I have Los Angeles to write about. But I really enjoy. I've done a couple of them, but the fish out of water story doesn't really work for me. I really enjoy writing about people who know their city and know how to get around it and know the secrets and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And I live most of the time in Los Angeles. I started with Harry Bosch, and so it was hard to break away from LA to write about anywhere in Florida. I've written a couple short stories that were set here, at least 3 that I remember. One was even a ghost story set in Tampa. But so I guess when you write short stories about a place, you're revealing that you're thinking about it.
Yeah.
So, before my time is up, I might end up doing something set here.
Interesting. Okay.
So speaking of Bosch, you have been heavily involved in the Bosch and Bosch Legacy, your 2 series for Amazon Prime, as well as in your Netflix series, The Lincoln Lawyer. In our newsletter Q&A, you said the biggest misconception about you is that you spend your days working on TV shows. So tell us then, what is your involvement in these series and what is it like to see your work come alive on the screen like that?
Well, I mean, my involvement is high or intense at the beginning of these shows to help get them set up and to help choose who's going to play Harry Bosch, for example. But what happens is, all these shows have writing rooms, and it's a lot like a newsroom. It really the pranking, the collegial things, all that is very similar. It really kind of takes me back to that. So it's fun to be in a writing room, but you reach a point where, through the hiring practices and seeing what other people have done before they come to Bosch or Lincoln Lawyer, you realize that they don't need your help. You just want to make sure you're surrounding yourself with people who want to revere your character and revere your books. I mean, there's so much stuff that's not in the books that goes into TV shows, plotting and so forth. So once I feel they don't need my help, I don't help them. I kind of And because at the end of the day, I write books, and that's my priority and what I love the most. It's amazingly fun and fulfilling to see something, especially when it's done well. And I think all the shows have been done very well. Like this new Ballard show, I've seen the first 8 episodes, and I think it's a great show. It's probably going to be the best show of all of them. And I get to bask in the glory of it. And like I revealed myself in your Q&A there saying like, everyone thinks I'm on these shows all the time, and I'm not. And especially in the last 4 or 5 years since COVID, when everything moved to Zooms, like the writing rooms were even on Zooms, and I can zoom into a writing room from my house, and and it makes it a lot easier to play a part in it. The one thing I do, again, I feel like I'm giving too many long answers, but
not at all. This is perfect. We love this.
Okay, well, the one thing I do is like, I get emailed all the scripts, the first, the raw scripts, and then I give notes. And that's really probably the biggest input I give is weighing in on who should be the lead actor. I don't weigh in. I don't go to auditions for all the other, other roles. It's really about who's playing the key character from one of my books. I get involved in that, and then I read scripts and say what I think, and I do that mostly from my office in my house.
I think that's amazing to see your work in a different format. It's like to be involved and get to say, here's who I imagine, here's what I think about this script, right? Without having to be the day-to-day grind of it. I think you have.
It's also, there's a long history of writers of books, saying bad things about Hollywood, but it really hasn't been my experience. I mean, and
I love that.
We all, when we write our books, we have this dimension where we can go inside people's thoughts and inside their heads. And you can't do that in a script. So to me, it's marvelous when someone can really deliver and this goes from writing to acting, a character like Harry Bosch or Mickey Haller, or Renee Ballard, and not reveal what they're thinking. Like we do. It's so easy to put that in a book, but they have to show it through what they do and what they say and what they can project from behind their eyes. And it's pretty marvelous when it works, and it's pretty awful when it doesn't. But I haven't had that experience. But I've seen it in movies and stuff like that. So I've had a really lucky path, and it's because of the quality of people that are involved on both sides of the camera, as they like.
I also think it has to do with how real Bosch is, right? There's not you have fully fleshed him out so much that they can't to take him in a different direction wouldn't make sense. Yeah.
Well, also, from day one, I mean, this is when I was exaggerating my skills on these letters to agents way back when. I was saying, like, hey, I live this life every day. I'm in police stations and I know hundreds of detectives. And, so the coin of the realm in my books, I hope, is realism. And, there's a lot of shows that are far-fetched and not real, a lot of cop shows, and a lot of cop shows that try to be as close to accurate and real as possible. And it's not just about procedure, it's about character, it's about people who do this work. And when you get people that are interested in taking that from your work, then you've kind of won the war. And then that's basically what I concentrate on when I'm involved in choosing who the writers are going to be or who the actor will be, that kind of thing.
Yeah. That's great to have that involvement. I mean, I feel like sometimes you talk to authors whose work has been produced for film or television, and they haven't had that much involvement and they're not happy with the finished product. So it's great that you've had a hand in it without having to steer the ship yourself.
Well, yeah, I mean, I had these 2 movies made and I had no involvement in those really. And movies are a different thing. They're a director's medium. TV is a writer's medium.
It's a good way to put it.
When the whole advent of streaming occurred, I've benefited from that so much. All my shows are streaming shows. They're all serialized shows. That was a big shift in television, from Case of the Week to being able to spend a lot of time with characters and on investigations. Mm-hmm. And, that has really been a key thing. And but I was also far down the road. I'd probably written 15 Harry Bosch books by the time Amazon called up and said, let's make a show. And I didn't need Hollywood at that point.
Yeah. Yes.
Early in my career, I needed Hollywood. I mean, that it was a Hollywood deal that allowed me to quit being a reporter. It wasn't a publishing deal because I wasn't an overnight success by any means. But, so it was, I was at this point where I said, okay, I'll do this, but I'm coming with it because I'm going to watch over this guy, Harry Bosch, because by that point, I'd invested almost more than 20 years of my life in this character, and I wasn't going to let him mess it up. If I could, it would be one guy against the big behemoth of Hollywood, but they agreed readily. And the other thing I said is, the coin of the realm in my books is realism. So you're not going to film this in Toronto to save money.
Yeah.
I love that.
I wanted in a contract that it's going to be filmed.
Wow. Well, good for you. Good. That's a great thing to fight for. So,
I mean, most writers are not in that position. I wasn't in that position in the 90s when I had my first dealings in Hollywood, but I was at this point. And so it was kind of a take it or leave it. And they took it. And I think that, and they don't regret that, because I think that's one of the reasons the shows are successful, because every shot is in LA.
Yeah, absolutely. So we have a live question coming in from Jill, who's watching on YouTube. And she's wondering if Maddie, Harry's daughter, is going to be a bigger part of the television universe from here on out. So I know she has a role in Bosch Legacy. Are we going to see more of her as time goes by? Is she going to take more of a center starring stage?
I think so. I mean, Bosch Legacy, I consider it one show. It was 7 seasons of Bosch and now 3 of Legacy. And that's coming to an end. So we have 1 season that comes out. I think it's going to come out in March. And then we move into Ballard, and we'll see many of the characters from Bosch and the books in the Ballard show. And as you guys have pointed out, in the waiting, Maddie comes in with a big case and has a big part. And it's like, more or less, I'm telling the makers of the Ballard show, hint, hint, bring in Maddie, you know? So I'm not the boss of all that, but I think, as I say, these are people that honor the books and honor the character. So I think the answer, another long answer, but the answer is yes.
Awesome.
Good news.
Yeah,
Good news.
Francis Scott is wondering the question I wondered about. I can't think of anybody else playing Harry Bosch than Titus Welliver. How involved were you in casting him as Harry?
Yeah, I was very involved. I didn't have any kind of I didn't have any veto power or anything like that, but I had surrounded myself with producers who wanted my input, and Amazon wanted my input. And I had seen Titus in a guest role on a TV show literally about a month before we were going to sit down and try to cast Harry Bosch. And he played an ex-military guy with PTSD. And he wasn't walking around saying, hey, I have PTSD. You could just tell he had it. He's a guy who can project stuff, what's going on behind his eyes. And that's, he doesn't, I haven't described Harry Bosch a lot in my books, but he doesn't look anything like Titus. But what I like to say is he looks exactly like Harry Bosch on the inside.
Oh, I love that.
And that was the sense I got from just watching this 2-episode arc he had on a show, and I can't even remember the show. So when we came to sit down, and the casting directors came in with lists of actors, I'm the book writer. I'm not a TV guy, and so I was very intimidated. But I looked at this. I went through all the pages very quickly, and I didn't see his name. So I thought, oh, maybe no one wants to work with him. He's a jerk or whatever. But we were going through the list, and at one point I said, what about him? And they said, oh, we love him, and he's a wonderful actor, but he's making a movie in China and Hong Kong, I think it was. And everything was prescribed. When Amazon said, let's do this, we got a schedule going, and we had to start filming on this date, and it gave us maybe 6 weeks to find Harry Bosch. And they said he would not be back in those 6 weeks, so he's off the list. And so we went down the road and we talked to tons of actors, auditioned some are on the level where you just they won't audition. You have to talk to them and see if you like them and they like you, that kind of stuff. It's a weird Hollywood thing. But we couldn't find Harry Bosch, and we were actually in the last week when we went back to them and said, anything new on Titus Welliver? And they said, well, good news, he's coming back this weekend to see his kids. And so we were like, well, families are important, but can we get an hour with him?
Wow.
The Saturday before our Monday deadline, he came in, talked to us. He did audition. He did a scene that was in the pilot, and we thanked him. He thanked us, and then he left. And then it was like seven or eight of us were in this audition. And somebody goes like, I thought right away, it's him. He's Harry. And but I wasn't going to be the guy who said that. Then someone else said, I think that was Harry Bosch. And then someone else said, yeah, it was.
Oh,
They all looked at me and I said, he's Harry Bosch. And then someone goes, run out into the parking lot and grab him, bring him back in here. So they did, and he brought him in. They said, you told him you got the job.
oh wow.
So
That's amazing.
That's incredible. I love that story.
He's done some writing for the show, hasn't he?
yeah, he and I have written a
Oh.
couple of scripts, and it's interesting. The final season that comes out in March, he and I wrote a script for that, and he's always been involved. I mean, his name's not on all the scripts, but he's very much a writer, and
Wow.
he comes in and talks about dialogue a lot. He likes to, like a really good actor will shorten dialogue. It's not like I need more words because I'm so good. It's they want to have less words because they can communicate stuff about words.
Yeah.
And that's what I love about him. He'll come in and really say, I want to take these 2 sentences and just say this, or just nod or something, you know.
Wow.
An economy of words is a sign of a good actor, I think.
That's a good point.
Amazing.
We've got so many live questions. We could go all night, but Carrie Soderman wants to know if you love jazz as much as Harry does.
I do now, but I have to admit, that was a nod to my father. It was his music.
Oh, nice.
So when I was writing the first books, I was using his music. I grew up like, you know, you gotta, I guess, reject your parents' music. So I was like rock and roll guy. And, but I just seemed like a loner detective. Jazz was, you know, it's probably a cliche, but I just wanted him to listen to jazz. But, you know, I'm a reporter, so I would listen to stuff and I would talk to people, and I got more and more advice, and I met some musicians, and I like obscure stuff that might make a reader, like, you know, go to their Spotify or Apple or whatever wherever they get their music and check something out and hopefully love it. Because the stuff I put in the books is stuff I love. And more often than not, I was listening to it when I wrote that page. I found that listening to jazz is great because it, you know, without lyrics, it's not intrusive on me writing words. And so I really have shifted towards listening to jazz more than anything.
It's amazing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I guess it's hard to listen to Allman Brothers when you're writing a detective series.
Growing up, that was my band.
Yeah, well, I'm a Florida girl too, so I can remember the day that they played the Almond Joys played at the National Guard Armory in St. Pete.
That's cool. They had a big for a long time. When I was my first job out of the University of Florida was in Daytona, and they lived there for a while.
Yeah,
wrote songs about Daytona.
Interesting. So this is a good one too, and then we'll wrap up, I think. But why? Kathy wants to know, why did you name Harry Bosch after the Dutch painter Hieronymus Bosch? Or did you? I'm assuming that she knows that you did that.
Yeah, same weird name. Again, I'm not trying to. It's funny how often we're mentioning University of Florida to Patti's consternation. But,
can I just say War Eagle and leave it at that?
You can mention the University of Florida as much as you want. You can come back anytime.
War Eagle. Okay, I feel better now. I thought you were going to say you went to Florida State.
No.
But, what was I going to? Oh, so when I was there, I had a humanities class where the teacher was fascinated with this 15th century painter who did these really dark things and works of art. So we studied him for 5 or 6 weeks, and I had never heard of him before. And so then many years later, I'm writing this book, and you know, we all know by the time we're writing books, we've read enough and we've gotten advice either from live writers or stuff they've written about writing. You never miss a chance to say something about characters. So names are important. So I wrote the first draft of my first Bosch book with the name Pierce. Because of an essay that Raymond Chandler wrote about how a detective has to pierce all levels of society, and by virtue of their job, they can go anywhere and pierce this and pierce that. And so I just called him Pierce without a first name. And then something between I don't know, one of my drafts, I remembered something prompted my memory of Hieronymus Bosch. And I thought, this is pretty cool. I mean, again, I was writing way before all you guys. There was no internet. So it wasn't like you could Google Hieronymus Bosch and find out who he was. He was a very obscure painter. And I kind of thought it would work either way. People would either know who that painter was and know that he wrote about the dark deeds in the world and the wages of sin and all the things homicide detectives encounter.
Yeah.
Or they would be intrigued by where do you get that strange name, Hieronymus Bosch. So I thought it was like a win-win character thing. And so I switched from Pierce to that.
Love it.
The funny thing was I've been on book tour, and so the real Hieronymus Bosch, the painter, was in Holland. He was Flemish and what is Holland today. And I go there, and almost every newspaper reporter who interviews me always says, why did you shorten Hieronymus to Harry? Because Hieronymus is the Latin derivative of the name Jerome. So they say it should be Jerry Bosch,
not Harry Bosch.
This doesn't have the same ring to it.
No, it doesn't.
No.
It doesn't.
So that was a mistake I made, but I'm glad I made it.
No, I don't think it's a mistake. I think it's an English language name, and you you shorten it in an English language way.
Yeah,
That's interesting.
You know, Michael, we could talk all night, but we're going to wind it up pretty soon. If you'll stick around, we have more to ask you about. But first, just a quick few reminders for our listeners and viewers out there.
For all of you watching and listening, we encourage you to rush out and buy your copies of The Waiting. The perfect place to do that is in the Friends and Fiction shop on bookshop.org. You'll be getting it at a discount and helping to fund our show, all while supporting our guests, such as esteemed University of Florida graduates and our beloved independent booksellers nationwide.
come on.
That's not where I thought you were going with that, and I love it. We also want to remind you to follow us on Instagram and to join our Facebook group, which is more than 250,000 members strong. When you visit friendsandfiction.com, you can stay up to date about everything we have going on, and you can sign up for Friends and Fiction Endless Stories on Substack, which is chock full of bonus content.
So, Michael, super quick answer as we round out the night. In our newsletter, when we asked you about your work in progress, you stated, and I'm quoting you, I'm writing a new character, probably my last one. What do you mean by this? Are you starting a new series? Is it a standalone? We want to know.
Well, it's like I said before, things start as standalones.
Yeah, exactly.
I wrote a short story many years ago. Off the coast of Los Angeles is an island called Catalina. It's kind of like a resort town. Only 5,000 people live on this island, but more than 1 million visit every year. And it's under the jurisdiction of the LA County Sheriff's Department. And they have one detective who works out there. And so I wrote a short story many years ago about a case and the one detective that's out there. And then I later thought that was a mistake. That could have been a whole book. So now it will be a whole book.
Oh, wow.
And it's called Nightshade, and that will be out in May. And
We're excited.
Yeah.
Okay, Michael, before we really, really let you go, you're on tour. Where can people find you on tour?
I just, believe it or not, I just finished my tour, so they missed their chance. This is it. Being with you guys is the
Grand finale.
final thing.
know.
The finale.
The big hoorah.
Yeah, my last one was at Oxford Exchange here.
Oh, aren't they the best? That's such a great place to do
Yeah.
book events.
We love them.
Laura's wonderful.
Love them. Yeah.
Well, I'm sorry people missed you on tour, but I'm glad we got to wind it up with you tonight. Thanks so much for talking about Renee and Harry and Maddie. We've been waiting a long time to talk up to you about The Waiting.
Yeah.
But thanks for being with us tonight on Friends and Fiction.
I'm glad to be here and glad to know you all, and really appreciate that you wanted me on.
Of course.
Thanks for
pleasure to have
coming.
you.
So nice to meet you.
It is an absolute pleasure to meet you.
Yeah. Be sure to tune in next week when Kristy and Ron and I will welcome our friend Craig Johnson to discuss his new novella in his beloved Longmire series, Tooth and Claw. That show will air on the Friends and Fiction Facebook page and YouTube channel on Wednesday, November 27th at 7 p.m. Eastern. and it'll be published to our podcast for your listening pleasure on Friday, November 29th. In the meantime, thank you all for being with us tonight, and we'll see you next time.
Good night, everyone.
Thank you for tuning in. You can join us every week on Facebook or YouTube, where our live show airs on Wednesday nights at 7 p.m. Eastern Time. Also, subscribe to our podcast and follow us on Instagram. We're so glad you're here.